Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First, to start, I want to ask how much of our waking time is spent communicating? So go ahead and let me know what percentage you think it is. Is it 18%, 33%, 70%, 97%? Go ahead and click what you think. Give everybody a couple of more moments. Oh, we seem to have a battle right now between 70 and 97% of our waking time is spent communicating. Well, the answer is actually 70%, which won by a smidge. We spend about 70% of our waking time communicating, and that communication can be spent reading, writing, speaking, or listening. Now, of course, speaking and listening makes up the greatest percentages of those, that 70%, but we have to keep in mind that those other areas of communication. And what we really want to do today is, as we talk about communication, we're going to dive a little bit deeper about what is really involved in that communication. And before we can really talk about is it authentic communication or is it just communication, let's define what that means. So Webster's dictionary defines authentic as an adjective. It's of undisputed origin, genuine. Communication, once again, is defined as the imparting or exchanging of information or news. And I love these synonyms. It's genuine, it's true, it's a connection. And so there can be communication that happens, but what we really want to hone in today is the three components that are really necessary for genuine, authentic communication. And the first one is before you can talk with others, you really have to accurately assess yourself. How do I communicate? Why do I communicate? What's important? And then not just your communication style, but your personality in general. For me, I'm very fast-paced, so I have a tendency to jump around. Great when I'm multitasking, not necessarily as great when it comes to communicating. For some reason, people have a difficult time following me when I jump from task to task and don't finish sentences. For me, it's perfectly clear. For them, it's not. Also, we're going to focus more on the face-to-face communication, and especially in the workplace, but I do want to bring a very important part of communication that seems to be growing more and more in our society today, and that's social media. If you can tell by our little caption here, I worry that Facebook is killing meaningful communication, and the responses like. We have to be very cognizant of, once again, going back to that definition of what authentic communication is. It's a genuine connection. It's a genuine imparting of information. So think about how you communicate, and while the tendency is to be more genuine, to be more thoughtful in our communication when we're speaking to someone face-to-face, social media has allowed us to take away that people aspect of it. So we hear instances often about cyberbullying, or if you are, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we've seen where companies have had their brands damaged a little bit by something that an employee has done. So regardless of whether it's through social media, email, texting, writing, face-to-face, the very first component of authentic communication is you have to be genuine, authentic, true. And once again, know what your communication styles is. As leaders, if you happen to be a leader in your industry or just in general, we do have to understand that as leaders of our company or our department or among our peers, that our self-awareness influences how we present. And I can't change Carrie's communication style, but I can change the way I receive her communication style as much as possible. So why are we talking about authentic communication? What's in it for you? Well, the first thing is with authentic communication is it's going to reduce conflict. The number one way that it does that is by building trust. I have that respect with you so that we can start this dialogue above and beyond the politeness factor. Hi, how are you? Let's dig deeper. It's going to help us achieve goals. When everyone's on the same path, when everyone has the same clarity, they're able to talk more. and those goals are able to be achieved. Once again, authentic communication strengthens relationships. As I said, you can go behind the wall of the politeness and that surface level to really dig deeper, to talk about it. And of course, as a leader, you want to give that communication to improve job satisfaction. 9 times out of 10, an employee wants that feedback. The good, the bad, and the ugly. How it's phrased will determine how it's received, though. It's going to help you save time. There's no more confusion. The YouTube video that we showed was a classic Abbott and Costello Who's on First skit. And how many of you, by show of hands, have ever felt that you've been in a conversation like that, where I'm telling you something, and the person I'm giving it to isn't receiving it, or someone's talking to you and you're just like, I have no idea. So we have 2 people in the same room having 2 different conversations. Think about your frustration level. Think about what a waste of time that it went in talking around it. I'll give you an example. Early on, before I came to Omni, I was beginning my banking career, had worked as a teller, was ready to move up, but the financial institution I was in, to move up within the company, you had to go to the customer service side. Was interviewing with a new bank, and they kept directing me towards teller supervisor, more of a leader. I wanted to move up into a branch manager position, so I'm trying to direct the interview back into, yes, I have this experience, but I can be a great customer service rep. It took the interviewer to stop and say, do you want to move up in the company and become management, or do you want to get away from working as a teller with the cash deposits and move more to the customer service? Because in the new financial institution I was interviewing with them, the path to management was along that teller supervisor position. So it definitely helped with easy promotions and saving time, because once we were on the same page, I was able to say, I want to move up. I want to be a manager. So yes, put me in the teller supervisor position. It's going to help me. As leaders, it will help you to develop your team. If you're not a leader in your workplace, it's going to help you with communicating with your managers, with your peers. And keep in mind that while we're focusing on the workplace, authentic communication applies to all aspects of our lives. We have to talk to people. It's a must. The second component that we're going to talk about after self-awareness is that communication, and it requires listening, which, if you know, most people like to run from communication, especially if it has to do with conflict. Just send it to me in email. I don't really want to talk to you about it. Or here, let me drop this bomb and I'm going to move on. But our ears turn off as well. So I'm going to pop something up, and I want you to read it out loud to yourself. We're going to begin now. So how many of you read, by a show of hands, A Walk in the Park? Okay. I'm seeing the majority of you did. How many of you, by a show of hands, read A Walk in the Park? So we're seeing some hands being raised. The majority of time, our brains filter out the unimportant information. And when I say the majority of time, I'm talking about 80% of the time your brain is constantly working to filter out information that it considers unimportant. So for many people, when they read that statement, A Walk in the Park, the first thing that they did was filter it out unconsciously and read A Walk in the Park, because your brain automatically knew that that extra the was not necessary. Now, for those of you who are on the call who are highly attentive to detail, you probably thought there was a typo there. Promise that it wasn't. It was there to understand. And as an example, A Walk in the Park, your brain filters out that other the. But your brain filters out what's unimportant to you. So when you're talking about authentic communication, as you're listening, you want to make sure that you're not imposing that filter of your perspective. What you consider is unimportant, another person, especially the person that you're talking to, is going to consider that very important, and you may miss some details. So, as I said, this is an interactive webinar, so we're going to take a break from this for a moment. If you have paper and pencil on your desk, go ahead and take it out. We're going to give you a little bit of a listening test. Ironic, since you're on a webinar. Well, what we're going to do is see how well you listen. I'm going to read a few questions. I just want you to go ahead and write down the answers for me. The rules are, I will not repeat the questions. So listen closely the first time. Number 1, in this list of names, George, John, David, Adam, James, Grace, which names begin with a J? Number 2, suppose you were given these directions. Go to room 315 and look in the lower right-hand drawer and bring me all the boxes of pencils that are left there. Would you look in the right or left drawer? And B, would you go to room 531, 315, or 135? Number 3, answer true or false to this. In the list of words be, see, free, glee, flee, me, the second word mentioned is free. Number 4, your spouse asks you to bring home meat, milk, cheese, bread. You bring home milk, peas, bread, and meat. What did you forget? Number 5, you're the driver of a school bus. At the first stop, 13 children get on. At the next stop, 5 children get on and 2 get off. At the next stop, 8 children get on. At the next stop, 4 more get on and 1 sneaks off. How old is the bus driver? Take a moment. Hey, so let's go ahead and tally those up. So give yourself 20 points if you wrote John and James for number 1. Give yourself another 10 points if you wrote that the right drawer is where you would look for the boxes of pencils. And another 10 points if you said you would go to room 315 for that. Give yourself 20 points if you said false. The second word is see, not free. And another 20 points if you said you forgot the cheese. And for number 5, if you wrote down your own age, go ahead and give yourself another 20 points and total that up. So if you scored 100%, excellent. You're a great listener. That's key to everything. You're well on your way to authentic communication. Give yourself 90 if you're a good listener. Give yourself 80 if you scored 80. You're fair. You have some room for improvement. If you scored 70, you need a little help with tuning in those ears. And if you scored 60 or less, well, let's just say that listening may not be your top skill, but it definitely has room to grow. The whole purpose of that is understanding that we have to listen. Because if we don't receive the message, or we're not listening to a point where we can ask questions for clarification, it leads to a disconnect in the communication process. And then it leads us to running, especially from that communication bear that's chasing us. Second component that we're going to talk about is that communication is verbal and nonverbal. And this is key. You really have to understand that we are judged and judge others by certain standards. So we are judged by the what, when, where, and how. What we speak and act, how we speak and act, when do we talk, where do we speak and act, and we judge others by those same standards. What, when, where, how they speak and act. And it includes how they look. We interpret those messages and we make inferences and often conclusions based on our observations and experiences with those communication processes. The time that this is truly most evident is when you start thinking about that interview process. When someone walks in, we're looking at how are they dressed? Are they professional? What's their body language? Do they invade my space? Do they take a step back? We play all of those components into our communication. And depending on what that communication is, it affects our perspectives. Real quick question. Go ahead and get ready to let me know what you think. How much meaning of a spoken statement comes from the actual word spoken? 75%, 7%, or 20%? So I'm seeing overwhelming. Give everybody a couple of more moments to select what they think. So the majority of you feel that about 20% of the spoken word comes from the actual word spoken. It's actually 7%. So out of that 70% of time of our waking time that we're spending communicating, out of that time, only 7% of the meaning of what we say comes from the words that we say. A perfect example would be, wow, Carrie, I love your sweater that you're wearing today. Happy? Complimentary? Wow, Carrie, I love that sweater you're wearing today. Same words, different connotations. By the way, Carrie's not wearing a sweater, but we're good with that. Just to give you an idea that how much of our conversation communication style truly comes from something that is not verbal. 7% of the words that we say account for the meaning. 38% of our communication is tone, and 55% is our body language, that nonverbal communication. And those statistics did come from a study by Albert Merabin. He pioneered the understanding of communication starting in the 60s and really established that early understanding of the correlation of body language and verbal communication. Keep in mind that when it comes to authentic communication, if 38% is tone and 55% of it is body language, we are moving to a society that the one way of communicating is electronic, email, social media. We've now reduced our communication from 100%, possibility of correctly interpreting it, but we've reduced it by 92% because we've taken out the tone and we've taken out the body language of it. So it's very important to understand that and to understand how important those nonverbals are. I always recommend that if you're communicating via email and there seems to be a disconnect, get up from your office and go to the person that you're trying to talk to if possible. If it's not possible, then pick up the phone, because then you go from 7% of understanding to 45% of understanding, because now you can hear tones. How we often communicate in nonverbal ways is by using groups of behaviors. We're going to use our facial expressions, whether it's eye rolling, frowning, gestures. If you could see me right now, I always talk with my hands, so I say if my hands were tied, couldn't talk. But when I get excited, my hands move in bigger gestures. When I'm upset, they move less. People that know me can communicate that. I'm sure Carrie's thinking, absolutely stay out of her way when she's excited because she talks with her whole body. Paralinguistics is the study of the vocal signals, and it's your tone of voice. Once again, the example I used is said the same words, said them very differently. You want to look at your body language and posture. A sign of actively listening and truly being engaged in the conversation is the leaning in. Now, it's not invading the personal space, but it is leaning in to show attention. We've always seen, well, I'm going to cross my arms because that means that I'm closed off. And it may mean that, but it's not always necessarily. Sometimes it just means a person's cold. Also, proxemics is very important. It's the use of space. Do I give you your personal space? Do I invade it? Do I stand at your door so you can't escape while I'm talking to you? Eye gaze, looking at someone is key. And it's very interesting that Carrie, and I'll use this example, is that when she's truly listening to someone, she'll tell you, I can't look at you. I have to look at, write my notes, or really focus, because it helps me focus. If I'm looking at you, I can get distracted. Haptics is touch, and once again, you've got to be very careful in the workplace with touch. But maybe it's touching the presentation. Maybe it's passing something along. And then you want to look at appearance. And absolutely, you want to make sure that the appearance that you're looking at is not discriminatory. But once again, think of it as the new hire, the interview process, how a person is dressed, how they appear. Are they neat? Are they professional speaking and appearance will be key towards that interview process. Keep in mind that authentic communication goes throughout our lives, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's during interviewing existing employees, whether it's a husband and wife and children. It's key to understand it. And Carrie has a great point, is that she is very, very important, that she tells us, hey, I'm going to look away. I got to look away and focus on what you're saying. So I'm not ignoring you. I'm concentrating. And she says silent message, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because we can definitely send messages that are nonverbal as well. We want to make sure that we're understanding what that is. Perfect segue into silent messages. Silent messages are those nonverbal communications that really tell someone up front what I want and what I don't want from you. Think of something in the workplace as, hey, can I talk to you? Sure. And I continue to type on the computer. What am I telling that person who's asking, can I talk to you? I'm telling you, what I'm doing right now is way more important than what you have to say. Once, as Carrie said, she lets us know I'm concentrating, because she puts her head down, she's thinking, and it could leave that silent message that I'm not listening to you. So what are some examples of silent messages that you think? Go ahead and type them in. And then the second question that I have for you are, what are some silent messages that you have sent or received? Thumbs up, great, Jenny. A smile or a frown, perfect. Shaking heads, nodding. The shaking heads and nodding are a great way of giving affirmation of yes. And silent messages can be positive or negative, and that's a great feedback, Jenny, because it shows them I'm actively listening. I'm giving you that. Eye contact is key. You know, I talked about arm crossing. A lot of times if someone sits back and their arms are crossed, it's I'm disengaged. I don't really want to hear what you have to say. Eye rolling definitely is a negative. Checking cell phones, absolutely. Checking emails. Open palms when you're speaking with your hands, foot, tapping foot. The other thing that I see is that someone said, and unfortunately I found myself guilty of this yesterday. I was on my way out to a meeting. Someone came in to talk with me, and I talked to him for a few minutes, and then instead of just saying, can we finish this conversation later, I grabbed my handbag and I stood up. What did I just tell them? I told them, I'm done with you. I got to go. Exactly, Tiffany. Thanks. Peace out. I've got to go right now. So playing on the iPhone, the iPad, walking backwards, leaning back, all of these are silent messages. And you've got to think about what you're talking to someone, especially if someone comes in, you have a scheduled meeting with an agenda to them. They walk in, and the first thing that you do is, oh, hold on a second, let me find what I'm looking for. Being late to a scheduled meeting or appointment is a silent message that your time isn't as important as my time is. And it can start that communication off on the entirely wrong foot immediately. You have to make sure that you're managing that. So some of the things that I say is that if you know you have a scheduled meeting, Control-Alt-Delete your phone, or your phone and your computer, so you're not looking at it. Putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, putting your cell phone on Do Not Disturb, and putting it away will allow you to say, okay, I'm fully focused on you. If you know you have that quirk that may be misinterpreted, I can't look at you while I'm talking, let me go ahead and tell them that up front. For me, one of the things that I found is I'm a very relational communicator, and that means I get excited sometimes with something one person has said, and so I'm waiting for them to stop talking so I can jump right in and my ears shut off. So I'll tell them, do you mind if I take a few notes? I want to make sure I get everything straight, because for me, I've learned that that slows me down. I can put an asterisk on something that I want to go back to, but I'm fully engaged in the conversation. And for authentic communication, you have to be fully engaged. If you are not fully engaged, then perceptions increase, you know, inferences are made, conclusions are drawn, silent messages are given. You know, as Cindy said, I'm looking around the room, I'm yawning, I'm not really talking to someone. It's key to let them know in advance that what my silent is not truly what I'm trying to tell you. And once again, being self-aware, if you know that you send that message, taking a step back to say, how can I correct those silent messages? Because you want to create that genuine connection with someone that allows that climate of trust to be built. And as that climate of trust builds, your communication will build. So how do you do it? You want to pay attention to those nonverbal signs. You want to concentrate on your tone of voice when speaking. Sarcasm tends to be a high art. I believe I have my master's in that. However, it is not always appropriate. What I consider sarcasm, someone else their perspective may be something entirely different. So you have to temper that. You want to use good eye contact and ask some questions about nonverbal signals. If someone's sitting back in their chair, their arms are crossed, they appear to be closed off, you don't want to attack them, but you may say something like, it's a little cold in here. Do you appear to have some questions? What can I help you with? Use signals to make communication more effective and meaningful. And we heard a lot of those signals. The nodding, the let me tilt my head, let me move forward, lean forward when you're talking to show that I'm actively listening. When I'm done talking, maybe I'm talking, when I'm done talking, I lean back so that you understand that it's your turn. Also, don't forget, you can verbalize as well. Restate, this is what I've heard. Is this correct? No, it's okay. Then let's talk about it. And then consider the context. And that's key. For authentic and genuine connections, pick your time and pick the correct context. If you have a conflict with someone, talking about it in the team meeting may not be the best place for it. Also, think about context of how was it delivered? Was the communication delivered via email? And you're interpreting it to be something that's a criticism. I think everyone's been accused of typing a flaming email at a time where, oh yeah, this is what I say, boom, 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 boom. But maybe you stop, and instead of hitting enter, you walk away, or you just hit delete, and you talk to that person. And then, like Carrie said, is it a good time to talk? Because if that's not the case, then you've automatically shut down communication before it begins. And keep in mind, if you are the receiver, you have to be able, and what I mean by receiver is someone comes to you and says, hey, Ashley, can we talk for a minute? And that you're able to say, can we talk in about a half hour? Or absolutely, give me this moment just to finish this thought on the computer, and then I'm all yours. It's mutual respect, is a climate of trust. Now, we also have to consider that there are some obstacles to communication. Some of those obstacles are interpersonal complications. Maybe I just don't get along with somebody. Organizational hurdles, physical barriers. And when I say physical barriers, think about some of those physical barriers may be remote employees. There's a lack of space. The open floor plan, so there's cubicles everywhere, so maybe I need to have a conversation with you. And Carrie, I really don't want you to talk about it in the middle of the floor plan where all of our coworkers can hear it. Email, text, social media, and then those communication shutdowns. And what I mean by communication shutdowns are phrases and words that people have a tendency to say that immediately shut down the conversation. Some of those communication shutdowns may be something like, that's not my responsibility. We really don't have the time for that. How about if it ain't broke, there's no need to fix it. Or that's not the way we do things around here. All of these, and if you have any other ones any other phrases that you've heard that are communication shutdowns, go ahead and type them in for us. But these phrases, these words, are immediate conversation stoppers. Hey, is now a good time to talk? Great question. No. Communication shutdown. You can say, no, can we talk in this time and offer a solution? But if it's just no, okay, well, I will come back and talk to you later. Many of us have our go-to phrases, whether it's intentional or subconscious or unintentional, but to genuinely grow in our communication styles is that self-awareness, that's understanding about what our phrases are, how we talk about things, how we understand things, and really talk about through it. And then also allow the receiver to have time to say, well, I've got a couple of questions about that. Why are we doing it this way? Have you thought about this? You have to understand that that's key. Okay. I guess I'm the only one that's ever experienced a communication shutdown. That's fine. Go ahead and talk about the prep work. So there is some work to be done to create that authentic communication. Some of it is you have to have a purpose. Every conversation has some sort of purpose, whether it's how was your weekend? Can we work on this project? It's got a purpose. There's a result. Whether that result is to build a trust and rapport and continue the relationship or to ask for a status. Think about your audience. Who are you going to talk to? And then once again, timing is key. You want to make sure that you are addressing situations in an appropriate time and place, and also look at the other person's perspective. So earlier this week, I was doing an on-site workshop for a client, and one of the things that we had them do is we split everyone into pairs, and I had one person make a fist. The other person on their team had to, so the verbiage was, okay, so half of you make a fist. Now, Carrie, you're my partner. Try to open my fist. Every single one tried to physically open that fist. My question to those that made the fist is, why did you resist? And I heard a couple of different interesting perspectives. One said it was a challenge. You told them to open it. I was going to win this competition. One was, well, you didn't tell me not to open it, so your first step was make a fist, and so I continued to do that. But the most interesting one was the person said, this is my fist. I control my fist. No one is going to make me open my fist. All they had to do was ask me, and I would have opened it. In that situation, in that perspective, the result was to get them to open their fist, but they didn't consider the audience. Because if they had considered the audience and understood who that person was and what their characteristics were and how they typically operate, it would have been very easy to say, would you mind opening your fist? And that compliance would be there. So when you're thinking about that, when you're understanding that, it's key to understand both perspectives and both both roles, both for the presenter, the sender, and the audience. And I say sender and receiver, sender and audience, they are interchangeable. Main things to know is that both should know their role, and those roles can change. So in the course of a 5-minute conversation, the sender and receiver could switch back and forth 100 times. The sender is the person speaking. The receiver is the person listening. So if you ask me a question, you're the sender, I'm the receiver. I go to answer that question, that cycle has been reversed. Now I am the sender and you're the receiver. So by knowing when it's your turn to speak and when it's your turn to listen, or your turn to send and your turn to receive, is key. You've got to know that. And regardless of what role you're in, you've got to actively listen. There's nothing more frustrating than asking a question and getting a completely different answer. It's happened many times. So then you have to go back and say, well, did I not state it clearly? Was it a clarification problem? Or was it that they just weren't listening? Both the sender and the receiver should be aware of your nonverbal clues. What am I telling the other person without even saying a word? And the last two is, once again, self-awareness. Know your stress level and know your triggers. If you are a person who, with here at Omnia, we do behavioral assessments, and we know that there are certain combinations that their triggers and their stress level is very different. We have a client advisor here that I manage who is very analytical, very detail-oriented. When I took over managing the team, she very clearly stated, if you need to talk to me, please tell me what the topic is, because if you ask me, come into my office, I automatically go to the negative. That's a trigger for her. The unknown is a trigger that increases their stress level. As your stress level increases, your ears and your receivers tend to decrease. So for me, I've learned to say, hi, can you come look at an assessment with me, please? Or I've got a quick question about this client, so that she automatically knows, okay, here's what it is. I also know for certain ones who are highly analytical, who are process-oriented, that I can't walk into their office and say, hey, got an idea, let's brainstorm about this, because they want to process. For me, I'm that relational, intuitive, fast-paced, love to talk things out communicator, so brainstorming is love it. Let's do it all day long, unless I've got something better to do, and then I'm going to cut it short. But I know my trigger is when I've got a lot to do, I'm not going to listen, and I'm not going to speak as clearly or authentically as I should. It's going to be a little bit more fast-paced. It's going to be a little bit more blunt. The silent message may be, I'm looking at you, but I'm 4 people down the line, so understanding that. And then remember, feedback is a two-way street. So once again, sender and receiver. You have to understand that when you're giving communication, whether as a sender or answering, you want it to be a positive position. You want it to be a climate of trust, not of distrust. I want to know that when I come and talk to you, Cindy, that we're going to have a great communication. It may not always be agreeable, but that our hearts and our perspective is to have this genuine connection, this true connection to work together towards a goal. You want to make it regular and follow up with it. You want to make sure it's timely. And also, whenever you're stating opinions or you're stating feelings or perspectives, you always want to use the word I. And this is key. So, agree or disagree? Do you like being told what you've done wrong? As in, Carrie, you made me feel like this webinar was too fast. I've just made her feel that it's all her fault. Or if you were on time, we would have more time you were 5 minutes late, so we don't have as much time. To open those lines of communication, use I statements. From my perspective, this is what I see. This is how I felt when this happened. it diffuses that defensiveness. It allows that communication to be a little bit more two-way and avoid those communication shutdowns. And then just to kind of put it all together, we really want to talk about, authentic communicators. They listen, they're attentive to both verbal and nonverbal messages, and most important of all, they understand themselves and what motivates others. This is key. You have to understand yourself, what motivates you, what your nonverbal messages are, both as what you send and what triggers you to kind of shut down or to open up for communication, and to really help others with building that climate of trust. So does anyone have any questions? Go ahead and type them in now. I see a couple of people are typing. Wonderful. We are going to, as those questions are coming in, just want to talk to you about a couple of different things. Is that, as I said, the resources to download. If you liked our listening test, you can go ahead and download it, as well as a copy of the presentation that we've given. And great question, Wanda. Is it going to be scheduled in a future time? We do schedule some webinars. It is recorded. We're also asking for webinar topics. So if you have any topic suggestions, please let us know. Also, any of our webinar topics are available on our website. You can take a look at it. We can schedule, do some custom and on-site presentations as well. Also, if you're interested in learning more about communication, enhancing your communication skills, we have a great new Excel IQ e-learning division. You can go ahead and click on those links where it talks a little bit about what those soft skills courses are. We are giving you a promo code of webinar 2014 for $5 off of a purchase of $145 or more. You can use it on any soft skills sets. We are going to, I see people are frantically typing, which is wonderful. And I thank you for being here, for listening to us. And once again, if you'll just let us know what some of your ideas for webinar topics, we want to make sure that these Lunch and Learns are educational and they are beneficial to you. Seminars for phone communication. Joe, we can definitely work on that for you. And we can touch base offline as well. If you have any questions, you can email me. My role is Key Relationship Manager here with Omnia. My phone number and email address is there. If you have any questions about soft skills, you can email or contact Carrie. Great question, Melissa. How do you improve your listening skills? Any suggestions? There's a few suggestions that I have for you. One is to know what your listening style is. If you find that you are easily distracted, I would go ahead and kind of Control-Alt-Delete, clear your path of everything. Also look at the person that you're speaking to. So I have someone that I know that comes in that's going to give me more information than I typically want to have because I'm not wired that way in my communication style. What I will do is make sure that when we have a scheduled call, I clear my desk, I Control-Alt-Delete everything. I take a minute or so before they come into my office just to take a deep breath to slow down. Also, if you have a tendency to not exercise active listening, write down, take notes to write down to refer back to them, restate what they have said as well will help with improving those listening skills. Absolutely. We will be sending out some electronic communications when the webinar is available. Suggestions about how to work with angry clients. Typically, we hear that a lot. And some of the suggestions that I have for that is, one, to determine, your first thing is you want to diffuse the situation. I would not use words such as the policy is or processes are. I have heard that's just the way it is, which that may be the case, but how do you deal with that? Really, most of the time when it comes down to someone who's angry, they want to be heard. So for someone in that, Chad, is to take a step back and to really listen to what they have to say, restate the the issue and then offer solutions. And that solution may not be what they want, but by offering them alternative solutions, I always like to say, instead of saying no, this is what I can do for you. To assist with that situation, this is what we can do. We also have some great conflict and communication, those soft skills courses can talk a little bit about that as well. Have a few more moments. Great conversation. Anybody else have any questions, comments? If you found something that works for you when it comes to communicating, what do you think that would, please feel free to share. If you're a leader, you also want to take a look at how you give feedback to your employees. We do have a webinar that talks a little bit about that with the art of coaching. You have some people who want to hear that, great job, atta girl, atta boys, frequently with that positive reinforcement. And then you have some people who want very job-specific feedback, understanding what their communication styles is key. And we have some great reports that talk about that, with either telling you how they're going to sell, how to celebrate and motivate them, what their leadership styles are, or what their professional development styles are. So if you have any questions about any of that, let me know. Great suggestions for our webinar topics. By a show of hands, how many of you would be interested in a webinar talking about conflict resolution between peers or leaders and direct reports? All right, so we're seeing that might be a topic to add as well. I know we've had one or two, but that would be perfect. And any feedback at all. These lunch and learns are for you. So we try to make it as broad as possible, but conflict resolution, authentic communication. Thank you, Tammy. How can I raise my hand 10 times? We'll work with you on that. Great. All right, and I see hands that are coming back and forth. And once again, if you can't think of anything right now, but something comes across your desk and you're like, well, I wish we had something on this, please let us know. Thank you for the kind comments, Linda and Melissa. And please make sure that you download those resources, the presentation, the listening test. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please go ahead and do it. We send out lots of great content, both on our Excel IQ business blog and through Omnia. And we are very, very happy to present these and talk about these. We have Lunch and Learns the third Thursday of every month. And looking forward to talking to you soon. Thank you, Nancy, for your kind comments. I'm going to open it up for one or two more questions. If not, communicating with millennials, great, Chad. Would it be just to explore that a little bit? I know we've still got a couple of people. If you have, would you like to explore communicating cross generations? Would that be something, by show of hands, that might be someone, not just millennials, but how millennials speak with baby boomers, etc.? All right, perfect. And we also are beginning to launch a new webinar series as well for our leadership styles, to learn a little bit more about your leadership styles and the leaders in your office for development. And that being said, thank you, Chad. We will we'll begin working on that, and stay tuned. We'll have that upcoming in 2015. And on that note, Carrie and I thank you so much for your patience and for joining us. For those of you who continue to come back, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. For those that this is your first time, I hope to see you back next month. And if you have any questions, as I said, please give us a call, email us. There is a brief survey at the end. Let us know how we did, what we could do better, and upcoming topics. And on that note, I just thank you and have a wonderful day.